So I was just inside shooting another video and got on a bit of a rant towards the end. The subject of rank came up, and so this is just kind of an off-the-cuff thing, something else I wanted to talk about and not run over on the previous video. So, as you may know, I'm trying to raise money to start a school. Not only a school, but an organization which will support the modernization of traditional martial arts, which is to say, taking these arts that typically don't compete or don't spar and start teaching them in more practical ways. Because I feel like that's being neglected in a lot of styles, and that we are sadly about to lose a lot of these different styles. So, I also, through my organization, want to commit some funding towards helping people who really want to go out and learn some more obscure styles to do that, and then bring them back and then help them establish schools and stuff like that. So big things I'm trying to do with this organization. But I'm also trying to start a school of my own where I can teach practical combat effective Aikido. And I also plan on doing some continuing education myself. One project that I've been working on for a long time is to resurrect, more or less, Golchuan, I believe is how you say it, which is a dog fist, dog boxing type of kung fu that has a lot of groundwork that's very little known. And it's about to be lost completely and forgotten, which is sad, and I don't want that to happen. So, eventually, help, go to Patreon, go to my GoFundMe. These are some of the things I want to accomplish. But anyway, let's get on with it, right? So, want to start my own school, and I'm not really sure how I want to do rank, because, believe it or not, the whole belt system that we're so familiar with, that's only been around a little more than 100 years, and it started with judo, and it's not really part of all martial arts. This thing that you're so used to, these belts, it's marketing more than it is anything else. It gets students to keep coming to class and keep paying their dues so that they can achieve these ranks. It gives them a goal to set, and so it's really just it's just marketing. It's just business. All right. But, I know that in running a school, I'm going to have to do some business. So, I'm going to have ranks of some kind, because it is a good motivator. It is good to help students to, set and achieve goals. And I've talked about this in a previous video. I do know one thing is for sure. I'm going to grant rank based on actual ability, not time spent in rank. And I've been told that, that makes it seem like a McDojo, allowing students to progress at their own pace. But, if you can fulfill all the necessary requirements to get up to first Dan in a year, then good for you, because I'm not going to make it easy. And I don't think anybody's going to. But, if they do, then that's awesome. But what I think makes a place a McDojo is when you dangle the belt in front of the student like a carrot on a stick and say, hey, if you, keep coming to class and you keep paying your dues, then after so many months or whatever, you can test. And then the test is just following some kata bullcrap, or, just some piddly nonsense. It usually is, until you get up into the higher ranks, then they start to be a little more challenging. But, really, it's too much. Okay. That's really the bottom line. It's too much, in my opinion. Okay. We have all these different belts, so many belts, and then you have to come up with tests for each one of them. And you don't really start doing anything until you got up into the Dan grades, and I don't see any point in setting all of these little, basically granting all these different Q ranks as like participation trophies, anyway, that's just my opinion. But so, here's what I wanted to talk about. Realistically, there's only like 3 levels to learning any system. Okay. First, there's learning your fundamentals. you know, your balance, your stance, your striking techniques, your footwork, you know, all of that stuff that we call taijutsu. Okay, you learn your taijutsu and you learn your kata, which, you know, whether it's solo techniques or like we did in Aikido, you know, doing things with a partner, it's still just kata. You're not sparring or anything. You're just familiarizing yourself with the fundamentals, learning the basic movements, and learning the basic mechanics behind those movements. Okay, so that's the first level. The second, the intermediate level, that's when you start to get into the variations, like I was talking about in my previous video, when you start to bring it alive and start to spar and practice with more resistance, you know? Um, when you learn to take those prescribed techniques and start adapting them and using them in a live and fluid and dynamic manner, that's the intermediate level. Okay, and a lot of traditional martial arts, and you know, I don't know why they call them that, because it covers everything from Aikido to, you know, myriad different styles of kung fu, and Aikido is around 100 years old, and kung fu is, well, some of those styles are, you know, hypothetically at least, according to the lore, thousands of years old. So, you know, what's traditional really? But that's a whole nother video altogether. Um, anyway, you know what I'm talking about, though. Okay, the ones that aren't normally big competitors, the ones that aren't normally seen in MMA. Okay, that's what we're talking about when we talk about traditional martial arts. So, yeah, a lot of traditional martial artists never even get to that going into the variations thing. You know, they just keep collecting techniques, and you know, then you just get stuck mentally in trying to follow these things by rote instead of bringing them alive and adapting, which I addressed in my previous video, which brought us here. So the third tier is when you, well, to put it simply, when you learn to bring the hurt, when you learn how to not only adapt these techniques, but like really do serious damage if you're in a situation that warrants really doing serious damage. And hopefully by that time, you've spent enough time practicing to know how to do these things without doing serious damage to your training partner. Because you are going to have to practice it. You know, you fight how you train. And if you only train kata, then you're going to be stuck mentally and physically in trying to follow these, you know, kind of techniques instead of learning to adapt and bring it alive, like we talked about for the second tier, like we talked about in the previous video. If you only practice to do minimum damage all the time, well, then, you know, you're likely going to pull back out of instinct because you've done that, you know, presumably hundreds of thousands of times. So, you know, you're going to have a tendency to kind of pull back when you shouldn't if you're actually defending yourself. So when you get to that third tier, you learn not just to adapt to the changes of your opponent, but to adapt your own techniques to do real serious damage. And at the same time, when you're practicing, you should know by this time how to pull back at the right moment, but then still not have that mental block, so that if you are in a real self-defense situation, you can legitimately defend yourself and really be effective. So that's the third tier, and a lot of people don't even get to that point. Now, in my opinion, that's a black belt. That's when you've actually reached black belt. Because a black belt is not a master, they're a beginner. Black belt is just the start. It just means that you've learned enough of the martial art to apply the fundamentals and to go out there into the world. And it brings to mind the old guild system, okay? Back when they had guilds, you know, you would start out apprenticing with somebody. You know, that would be your master, right? You would apprentice under someone who would start to teach you the basic skills, and then, you know, you'd be kind of their gopher for a while. Then after a while, they'd trust you with a little bit of their work, you know, and that's when you reach that intermediate level. That's kind of the equivalent to the second tier that we just talked about. And then the third tier would be what back in the guild days they called a journeyman. A journeyman is somebody who knows enough of a skill or trade to go out into the world and start applying it on their own. And that to me is what a black belt is. That to me is what a teacher is. I'm not a master, I'm a journeyman. I'm going into teaching because it's the next phase of my learning. It's the next thing that I need to do in order to learn and evolve my art. So what is a master? Well, I don't believe in them, frankly. Bottom line, you see, a master, to me, is somebody who really devotes themselves to the art. You know, these are the people who continue to practice on into their 70s, 80s, 90s, you know. These are the people who have these higher aspirations, who are doing it for health, who are doing it for their the mental and spiritual blessings that it brings them, you know. That's when it gets all kind of esoteric, you know. But really, it's just loving the art enough to fully commit to it. You know, being a master is like having a PhD. It means going into a field, not to say that you know everything about it, but to continue to study it, to continue to evolve it, to continue to contribute to that field. That's what a PhD does. That's what a black belt should be doing when they go on from their journeyman status onward and, you know, continue to practice and continue to learn. And that's the closest thing to a master you can become. But you take anybody that I would consider a master probably wouldn't consider themselves a master. And I think that's kind of the point. So, you know, just remember that the black belt is just the beginning. You're not a master of anything at a black belt. You're just a beginner. You've only just learned enough of the martial art to start applying the fundamentals, to start actually doing something with it. You know, so go out there and compete and spar and, you know, fight. I mean, that's what it is. It's a fighting art. So fight, apply it. And if you can do that, then maybe teach. If you have the skills to be able to teach people, then teach them what you've learned. But don't stop. Don't consider yourself the end-all, be-all. Instead, know that now that you can actually apply it, you need to find other ways to continue to contribute to the field, to continue to contribute to your art. That's what mastery is. It's not knowing everything and being done. It's caring enough about it to continue on.